Reading as we are from Parshat Bereshit, from a Parsha of beginnings, I can't help but let my mind go back a number of years to a specific beginning in my own life and my own career. As I began, going now about 6 years ago, in my time beginning my role as senior rabbi here at Adat Ariel. And when I began that role and took on those responsibilities, I was very fortunate to be able to have a partner, someone with whom I could share that work as we went forward together. She was, at the time, and still is, I'm sure, but at the time I was inspired by her strength, her insight, her passion for Torah, her deep spirituality, and her love for Am Yisrael, for the people of Israel, for Eretz Yisrael, for the land of Israel, and for Torah Yisrael, for the teachings of Israel. So it is a pleasure, a really, really wonderful pleasure, to be able to share the bima once again with that partner with whom I began 6 years ago, with Rabbi Elianna Yolkut.
If you want to invite me back every season, that will be perfectly fine, because then I can just, keep this with us. Just saying. Thank you. Just first, a few brief thank yous. First to the rabbis. I don't know where I see Rabbi Bernhardt. I don't see it there. Rabbi Silver. And the cantors for sharing their bima. Not every clergy team is quite so generous with their bima. Just in case you didn't know, in the United States, there are a lot of rabbis and cantors who don't much appreciate guests on their bima. So thank you for always being open and generous to sharing the bima with me and so many other people. I want to actually thank the whole congregation on behalf of both Stephanie and I for a tremendous outpouring of support when Ayla and Elijah were born. Now, actually today, 7 months ago. The amount of calls, emails, gifts, generosity was really awe-inspiring for us. And we were so grateful. We are so grateful to have family and community all the way out here, even when we're back in New York, and we felt that very, very much. Hopefully you got your thank you notes. If you didn't, you can blame me being a new mother of twins. But we are so, so grateful, and they've worn all the outfits and used all the blankets, and every single thing that you sent, they have definitely used in good health, thank God. And then finally, to Stephanie and Steve and their kids. I try not to cry, so it's an honor for us to be here. We wouldn't have missed it for the world. And I am really, really touched to be asked to speak and share this simcha with you, and to really be a part of what it feels like to be a part of your family, sort of like a fourth child that you never got, maybe, for one of you. And I'm so thrilled to be able to share being with your children when they come to New York, and I hope I will be able to repay you through gifts to them someday, the gifts that you have bestowed upon me and upon our family. Okay, with that introduction, I'll put this away now, but I am really excited that the Cardinals won last night, even though I missed the game for your dinner. Okay. Look, I don't normally watch TV on Shabbos, but I often was one to say in rabbinical school, baseball, doche hakol, baseball postpones everything else. So yes, ESPN was on in my room so I could see the score when I got back to the hotel last night. I eat too fast. I mean, really too fast. I've known this for a long time. Every person I dated told me so, but I have come to truly understand this on a much deeper level as Ayla and Elijah, our 7-month-old twins, have just begun the process of learning how to eat something other than breast milk. You see, we decided not to introduce them to food in sort of the typical way with purees, but through a theory called baby-led solids. This idea suggests that children should learn to eat not by swallowing first, but by chewing with real food, not mushed up peas and pears or sweet potatoes and apples, but instead big chunks of meat and a whole apple, so that they are encouraged really to play with their food, experience it, and more importantly, to take their time and come to eating and enjoying that process in their own time. This means that they can work on a slice of an orange, like they did this morning at breakfast, for a really long time in baby time, or a piece of a bell pepper for 10 or 15 minutes. I have relished the opportunity to watch them learn to really study and take their time with their food. And so there are many moments when I do watch them eat, and I mean many moments, and it gives me a lot of time to think. And I've come to realize just how fast I eat, gobbling up food as if someone's going to take it away from me if I don't. It's possible to explain this unhealthy behavior in two ways. Either we could delve this deeply this morning into my psyche, which I don't think anyone, including me, really cares to do, or I could simply tell you that I have 3 brothers. And in my house, if you didn't eat quickly, you either missed out on getting to talk or share an insight or your latest escapade because the meal was already over, or by the time you finished eating and cleared your plate and got outside to whatever ball game of the day your brothers or your friends were playing, they were already in the 3rd inning or the 4th quarter, and you missed out on picking the team, or you missed out on playing at all. So I learned how to eat quickly, speak quickly, as many of you know, and be at the game for the first pitch. And so by the time I left my house for college at 18, the habit was ingrained in me, and today my fast-paced food consumption is still rather frightening. You see, I've spoken often here from this bima of the profound influence my parents have had on me and who I have become, and while that is certainly true, my brothers and our siblings, all of them, influence us, and that influence cannot be underestimated. After all, our brothers and sisters are our peers. So if they're rushing to finish their food to go play a ball game, then you eat fast too, so as not to lose out on the food, on attention, or on the competitive success. I once heard a colleague tell a story about a time when they brought home their second child, and their 4-year-old, the older brother, was perfectly kind and menschy to his new brother until he realized they weren't returning him to the hospital. And one day after this discovery, the father of this young boy saw him walking with a plastic toy hammer into the nursery and asked him what he was doing. And the little boy replied, "I'm going to fix something." Because sibling rivalry is ingrained in us. We all want attention from our parents and from those we love, and we all resent to a greater or lesser degree when someone else gets it. And that is a precursor to our future lives. We don't like when other people get what we think is coming to us, even when the other people, or maybe even more so when the other people are close to us. Think about it. What is the most common phrase from the lips of a child? It's not fair, which of course never refers to a situation where they got too much and their siblings got too little. This brings us to the Torah and this morning's Torah portion. In it, the story of Cain and Abel. But don't be fooled. That's not the only story of sibling rivalry. The Torah has a rich number of stories, especially in Breshit, the book we began this morning, recounting sibling rivalries and the havoc they wreak on the lives of their families. I want to review the history before we get back to Cain and Abel so it's fresh in our minds. Remember, after the Jewish people are created through Abraham and Sarah, you have the rivalry of Isaac and Ishmael. When Isaac comes along, the rivalry is not even simply between the two of them, but between their mothers, and Ishmael eventually gets cast out of the house. It is, according to the Torah, as if these two brothers can literally not live in the same place, and there's only room for one. And then, to compound this, Isaac, as if he hadn't learned a single thing from his own childhood, creates an environment, at the very least, if we're kind, that allows sibling rivalry to grow up between his 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. And they are bitter rivals, we're told, even from before they were born in the womb. Jacob deceives Esau and steals his birthright, and in response, Esau threatens Jacob's life. And that dynamic sets into motion a whole nother series of events in the Israelite history because Jacob has to run away, and in his running away he finds his wives, and in his finding his wives he gives birth to many children. And the brothers, at least 10 of them, hate Joseph because their father has favored him. He is arrogant, Joseph, and he tells his brothers of his dream and his power, and he rules over them, and their anger is palpable in the Torah, and they hate him for it. And just short of killing him, they sell him into slavery. All of this, though, of course, begins this morning in the Torah reading with the first story of sibling rivalry, Cain and Abel, Cain and Hevel. We ask the question, why does Cain kill Abel? And the text hints at the reason, but never really tells us. But there is an enigmatic sentence in the story which is insightful for us. After both brothers bring an offering to God, and God pays heed only to Abel's gift, Cain is distressed. And God responds with an ambiguous statement which calls out for our interpretation. If you want to look at it, you can. Genesis chapter 4:6, we read, Lama charalach v'lama naflu fanecha, halo im tetev se'et ve'im lo tetev, lafetach chatat rovetz, ve'elecha tishukato v'ata timsholbo. Why are you angry? Why has your face fallen? God says to Cain. Is it not, if you do right, that you will be raised up? And if you don't do well, that sin crouches at your door and you can master it? What does this mean? What is God saying to Cain? God is saying the idea of sibling rivalry is innately present. It will always be in our lives. But the question is, when it crouches at your door, what choice do you make? Can you overcome it? And this idea of sibling rivalry and the possibility of overcoming it is so powerful that it has not only generated works in major fields of study, but it also runs throughout fiction. In particular, I'm thinking of a book that takes its theme from this biblical story, John Steinbeck's East of Eden, where they try to understand the aforementioned verse from the Bible. And if you read the book, you'll find a very implausible scene in the middle where these ancient Chinese scholars are trying to understand the story of Cain and Abel, and specifically the word timsholbo, to rule over it. They hire a rabbi to teach them Hebrew, and they sit around and discuss what the story means, and ultimately they decide that the message of the story is that Cain didn't have to do it. Cain was not fated to kill his brother. Cain could have refrained. This is God's message too. Sin crouches at your door. It lures you, but you can be more powerful than the lure. From the very beginning of the Bible, the two stories which are paradigms of disobedience, one, Adam and Eve who disobey God, and two, Cain and Abel, where Cain destroys his brother, ultimately teach us that we can choose. Abel could have lived. Adam and Eve could have listened, but they didn't. And while it's not important for us to chide them for their choice, it is an important lesson for us to learn. Because the Torah is in history, and it certainly is in science, but it is a blueprint for how we can each live our daily lives. And so this brings us to the last story of sibling rivalry in the book of Genesis. So let's remember Cain and Abel, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, Joseph and his brothers, and then you come to the very end of the book of Genesis that's filled with this sense that it's impossible to get beyond this angry strife, competition, hatred, and destruction in families. As if life begins and ends with these tensions. And then Jacob comes down to Egypt because he discovers that his son Joseph is in fact alive, that in fact the brothers did not destroy him but only nearly did. Joseph comes forward to Jacob, his father, and says, I have two sons. And immediately we're thinking, oh no, here we go again. I have an older son, Manasseh, and a younger son, Ephraim. And I want you to give them a bracha. I want you, Father, who I haven't seen in decades, I want you to bless them. So he brings them to Jacob, and he puts Manasseh at the right hand of Jacob, which is the hand that gets the dominant blessing, the more important blessing, the greater blessing, the blessing of the firstborn, because Manasseh is the firstborn. And he brings Ephraim to Jacob's left. And what does Jacob do? Jacob switches his hands, taking his right hand and blessing the younger child. And Joseph thinks in his naivete that his father is old and infirm and doesn't realize what he is doing. And he says, no, you're getting it wrong. You actually, Ephraim and Manasseh, you have to switch your hands. And Jacob says, no, I know exactly what I'm doing. This is the one that should get the blessing of the firstborn. And it's a powerful scene where you think Manasseh is going to explode for not getting his rightly blessing. But the greatest power in this Torah story is what doesn't happen. After Jacob gives the firstborn blessing to the younger child, Ephraim, what does Manasseh do? Absolutely nothing. He doesn't protest. He doesn't yell. He doesn't plead with his father or threaten his brother. He doesn't say anything in anger at all. He keeps silent, and he accepts the fact that he has a different role and a different place, and he doesn't even say the words, "It's not fair." In some ways, all of Genesis is leading up to this moment, even though we usually pass it by as nothing important at all. From what we read this morning, human relationships are all about the impossibility of people getting along when we come close to one another. Adam and Eve, in their ultimate intimacy, end up blaming the other. Cain ends up killing Abel out of the ultimate sibling rivalry, putting into motion a whole series of stories where there are dire consequences to painful competition between siblings. Yet, all of a sudden, in a moment of sublime silence, Manasseh gives us the answer. That is why on Friday night, when we bless our children, we bless our daughters, Yisimech Elohim Kisara, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. May God make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, the foremothers. But when we bless our sons, we don't say Yisimcha Elohim Ke Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. May God make you like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But instead we say the Hebrew Yisimcha Elohim Ke Ephraim v'Chi Manasseh. Why Ephraim and Manasseh? Why do we bless them to be made like Ephraim and Manasseh? Do they take precedence over our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? The traditional answer is that one of them, Ephraim, worked in the field, Manasseh worked in the field, and Ephraim was a scholar, and everyone wants a child who can do both, but I think that answer stinks. There's a much more important answer. They do this. We bless our children because we're trying to give them a clear message. We want you to be a child who can exploit what opportunities you are given, but who can also accept those things which are given to other people. You should be capable, but peaceful. You should be able, but not angry. The story in Cain and Abel is all of our stories, not just for those of us with siblings that we don't get along with, because in Jewish tradition, every human being is a brother or a sister. So our sense of grievance or anger at the world because someone else gets something we wanted or we deserved offers us a choice. Do we take the road of Cain, or do we take the road of Manasseh? Do we choose peace or hatred? Do we choose to be grateful for the gifts that we have been given, or resentful for the ones we haven't been blessed with? I have to add a personal note. I can't help but share this morning, as you may have noticed in the booklet, that our bar mitzvah today, Eli Klasky Gamer's name in Hebrew is, I think appropriately, Eliezer Manasseh. His middle name for Stephanie's paternal grandfather, Manny, Avraham Manasseh, and Steve's maternal grandmother, May. And Eli, I wouldn't be a rabbi if I didn't think that you, Eliezer Manasseh, was a sort of corrective to the story of Cain and Abel. That you have a chance not only to live up to your familial namesake, to your family ancestors, but to the name of the character in the Torah that you carry with you. It is the blessing of your name that can teach you how to live and how to help all of us to live. So today I'm going to ask you to use this opportunity of your journey into young adulthood and all the blessings you have been given to live up to the name Eliezer Manasseh, to be God's helper in helping all of us become like Manasseh. Because Manasseh is the unsung hero of the book of Genesis. It is Manasseh, through goodness and acceptance and a choice of peace, who finally teaches us how to undo the legacy of Cain and Abel. And Ellie, I know we both love an unsung hero on the ball field, the player who works the hardest but gets the least credit. So perhaps we can all remember today to be the unsung hero of the Torah and live in Manasseh's light in the lives of our families and in our communities, to live a life where blessings rule over our disappointments. And certainly we all have disappointments, but where we make the choice that brotherhood and sisterhood dominate us, and jealousy is squelched by acceptance. For it is possible to choose to be like Menashe, and in so doing, change the course of our own lives and change the course of history and in the world through our deeds. Ken yehi ratzon, so may it be your will. Mazel tov and Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.